The all-new Southwest USA region pack has just been released for City Skylines 2, available to everyone free of charge at Paradox Mods. This new pack contains 7 new zones and a host of new signature and service buildings. So today I'm collaborating with Paradox Interactive to bring you guys a detailed look at what this pack has to offer through the start of an all-new California-themed city. Now it all begins on a slightly modified version of the beautiful Fort Bragg, California map by the actual real chair. But before we start the city, let's take a quick tour of all the new stuff in this pack, which has been a collaborative effort by some very familiar names from the modding community. Badidea, Bad Peanut, Bisquickelhausen, Darf, Geese, Grooney, King Leno, and Smileys, and I'm sure I butchered one of those. So as you can probably see from this overview, there's quite a few things to cover, so let's dive straight in, starting with low density residential. We have an all-new USA Southwest style single and semi-detached houses zoning theme, and this one is gorgeous. So what I've done here is I've laid out a handful of the level 1, 3 and 5 assets from this pack. There are more assets and there are more zoning variations, but I think this provides a decent overview without completely overwhelming anyone. The level 1s are these detached one-floor houses with pretty simple materials, but the textures are of a really high quality and they generally look really nice. There's a decent amount of variety in the prop selection and of course the zoning tile size. Something that's interesting to note here is that this theme is only 5 tiles deep with the biggest assets. So just keep that in mind if you map out your road layout to get a really dense cluster of these. Additionally, none of the lots are more than 3 tiles wide. I think this is a pretty cool choice as well, because much of Southern California at least is actually pretty dense, at least within city limits. So even though it's single family detached housing, something like Los Angeles has a pretty high density if you actually look into it. Anyways, that's a nerdy topic for another day. As we move on to level 3, this is where we start to see some real changes in the actual assets. And as you guys can see, there's been an additional floor added to most of these units here. They still look very beautiful and these are very, very fitting for like grabbing one version and just pasting 1,000 of them to make it like a really simple single developer development. We also have these versions here, which I find very interesting. These are almost like row houses, and I mean, in the asset editor, you could repurpose them as modern row houses if you so please. And then as we move on to level 5, more windows and weirdly shaped roofing is added. We're almost moving into the famous, or rather infamous, McMansion style here, but once again, just beautiful work by these creators, and I can't wait to use this for massive Californian sprawl. And I think the natural transition here is to go up a single density level, because we do get a USA Southwest style row house zoning theme, which is so cool. It's a bit of a smaller theme, as you guys can see. I think I've got every single asset here, but there is quite a bit of variety when they actually level up. Some of them seem to turn into like highly renovated or modernized versions of what was previously placed there, which is very cool. I think it's going to add just the amount of variety you need, and some of these are very colorful as well. Now I know a big question is, are these recolorable? So let's just grab this one and have a look. These are, and if we move over to the low density stuff, you can recolor these as well, although this is a bit of an odd color scheme. Anyways, I can't wait to use this one as well, because it's going to be so cool to be able to transition from row housing to low density, or the other way around as you move closer to downtown. And for another natural transition in densities, we'll move from the row housing to this all-new USA Southwest style small apartment buildings. Once again, I've plopped out most of the level 1, level 3 and level 5s so that you guys can see how they change as they level up, and we're mainly talking about density increases here. Extra floors are being added, but in some cases, as you can probably see, entirely new assets are being used. Once again, these are highly recolorable. I mean, you can get some pretty crazy results. If we grab this color scheme here, which is very fancy, you can... yeah. you can go ham here, and I'm all for it, because this is just going to give so much additional flexibility when using this zoning theme. And in the first place, some of these buildings are super general. I mean, if you move in with the better Bulldozer mod and get rid of a few palm trees, you can use these in many different types of cities. Now, amazingly, we can do another natural transition in density, because we also get a USA Southwest style large apartment buildings zoning theme. And the point I just made about, generic applicability is very much the case here. In fact, there's only a single asset that follows through the levels here that I would classify as traditionally North American. The rest of these have a very contemporary look that you can use anywhere. And as you guys can see, we simply see more floors and more density being added as we level up. But that's very cool as well, because it means that if something like this spawns when you zone it out at first and you actually like the general architecture, you can just kind of let it stay, because it's generally just going to move within the same architectural boundaries, but just get taller. Oh, and these are also recolorable, although to a slightly less extent than the medium density it seems, but you can still personalize them quite a bit, which is a very nice touch. Let's transition to what is technically the 5th residential theme, although with storefronts on the bottom, because we also get a mixed-use theme, more specifically a USA Southwest style apartment buildings with commercial space on the bottom and apartments on top. Quite a mouthful. I've highlighted some level 1, 3 and 5s here, and we see some pretty general density transitions as well. And these just look great. Some of these has a more traditional architecture that I feel you can fit into any North American themed build. But some of them just have that kind of general applicability. This could be placed in a redeveloped area in a European city as well if you wanted to. And that is very much the same for this more modern style architecture as well. As for recolorability, let's see if we can make some of these look wacky. Yeah, we can definitely make things colorable here as well. Very nice. Moving on, we also get a low density commercial theme. Let's see, USA Southwest style stores, boutiques, supermarkets, restaurants, motels, bars and travel agencies. Once again on show here, level 1 through 5. Something I like is that there is a lot of variation in the lot size, from pretty large lots to some really tiny boutiques. But I also like that some of the buildings are very unique as they level up. So imagining this being the 4x6 you place in one location, you can just grab the level 3 4x6 as well and place that right next to it, if you're someone who likes to manually plot your buildings, because the actual building is entirely different. And you can even place the level 5 4x6 right next to those, and all 3 buildings are going to be unique. And the addition of some motels I think is really, really cool as well. So we're starting with some really low density grimy motels here you can place near near a highway or some old industry. And then as we move up through the levels, at first a bit of density is added, but then finally an entirely new architectural style that looks a little fancier is kind of there to round up this part of the zone. Moving on to a low density office theme. I was quite surprised to see this in the pack, but a welcome surprise nonetheless. USA Southwest style small office buildings 1 through 5, and as you guys can see, the main change here as we move through the levels is the density. And of course I gotta do the little colorized test, so let's grab the colors of this one. And it seems like these are a little less restrictive, so there are a few elements that change the look. These one have quite a bit of quite a big wall segment that ultimately changes, this one as well, but it's a little more limited. And I didn't really get to test this. The low density commercial can be colorized quite extensively, it seems. Very nice. And that rounds out the 7 new zoning types. I am super excited about just about everything we've seen so far. So let's move on to some signature buildings, and these are very interesting as well because we get these low rent housing signature buildings and they have a real in the hood vibe. So I'm I really like these. I would have wished for more versions, maybe something that is a bit of a smaller lot size, because these are 10 by 9 and these two are unique. As you can see, there's added parking and a a basketball field here. Something to note though is that the household count is insane. I mean, this is gonna be like 2,000 people or something when this development has matured and people have moved in and established young families. Not really sure what the deal here is. My guess would be that this is just determined by the actual lot size. So since it's low rent housing, which is usually pretty high density, and it's 10 by 9, the household count is extremely high. But yeah, I mean, it's a small thing. Moving on to the signature buildings, we're starting with commercial stuff. We get an arts and draft spa, perfect to place in your new hipster California themed district. And you can follow that up with the art supply store and even the Westwood Center. And then we get this bad boy here, the Sunshine Hotel, and that is a beautiful, beautiful, very Californian building. We've even got the palm trees in place and everything. And then to round out the signatures, we also get a high density office building. And I really like this because it has this medium density vibe that I think it can be sorely missed. And I think this one plays pretty nicely in with some of the Japanese themed medium density stuff we also got. So a pretty bulky footprint, not too tall, and a kind of a generic, somewhat boring appearance. I really do like it. Moving on to service buildings, we get a USA Southwest themed medical clinic. Pretty cool looking, very generic. It actually comes with palm trees. I've just removed them with better Bulldozer just to make it even more generic. You can add an upgrade with 30 additional patient capacity and 3 more ambulances. It's within the footprint of the original building, so it's a nice little addition you can add there. As we move on, we get a massive central hospital in the Art Deco style, and this is just a beautiful asset. I mean, wow. And there is a ton of ambulances here and a ton of patient capacity with a 1,000 capacity. We get 2 upgrades. They're identical, but on either side of the building. So you can add the ambulance bay west, adding additional ambulances and a medical chopper. And you can do the very same thing on the other side of the building. And I actually like that the upgrades don't take up any more footprint, because this building is very specific in style and just the overall bulkiness. So I do imagine that you'd need a pretty dense city surrounding this to make it kind of fit the theme. Let's move on and have a look at the USA Southwest Firehouse. It's a pretty cool generic little building as well. We've got a single upgrade adding in 4 additional fire engines. Once again, it doesn't increase the footprint of the building, making it very easy to upgrade. Then we have this USA Southwest Fire Station, a much bigger version with many more fire engines at play here. And we have 3 upgrades here. We can add a training tower. Very cool. And we can add a disaster aid office to, this radius here. We can add it over here as well, which is always a nice little addition. And then we can add the firefighting helipad, adding a chopper to the whole complex. Moving on from firefighting to policing, we get the Southwest Police Station, a pretty cool generic looking asset with some very nice features. I really like the prop usage up here. Very tasteful, and a nice looking parking lot as well. 2 upgrades available. We can add expanded holding cells out the back here, adding 25 additional jail capacity, and a police car motor pool, adding 8 additional vehicles. So it's a cool expansion of the existing parking lot here. Yoink. And then if you want to be really tough on crime, you can add the Southwest style police headquarters. This almost looks like a spy factory, to be honest, but really, really nice design. I can imagine repurposing this as well into like a modern office building. But yeah, it's really cool. You've got a single upgrade, the police helipad to be added up here, adding some helicopter policing capability as well. Very nice. As for education, we're gonna start with the Southwest Elementary School, and this one is cool because not only is it aesthetically beautiful and once again generic looking, but the upgrades are super potent. So it starts with a 1,000 student capacity. Now if you add the arts and music building within the existing footprint, you add 500 to that. If you add the additional classrooms, once again within the same footprint, and the reason I highlight this is that then you don't have to clear additional space for it, you add another 1,000. And then if that's not enough for you, and it's not gonna be enough for you because you're gonna be just like me and struggle with building enough elementary schools. Okay, I'm projecting here, but I do struggle with that. You can add the annex building, or maybe even several of those, which add another 750 apiece to the school capacity. So now we're sitting at 4,000. Oh, and once again, the surface and parking work here is just, it just looks amazing. I mean, when assets are this detailed, you literally just have to add a few palm trees if that's what you're going for. You can just call it a day. Anyways, let's move on to this beefy boy. This is the Southwest High School, and it's got the same beautiful vibe and aesthetics as the elementary school, the same generalized. Oh, and as you can probably see, the high school and medical clinic are very much recolorable, while the elementary school, you can change a few things and the rest don't really change. And I think that's fine. These are service buildings and they do have pretty generic color schemes in the first place. Now, this should cover most of what you'll find within this pack, so let's get some of this to use. I want this to eventually grow into a big, sprawling city, so I've added in a 6-lane highway that cuts mercilessly through this beautiful stretch of California coastline, including a long, sunken stretch that I imagine will act as a transition to the eastern suburbs. And after checking that the wind direction is north-northeast, I've removed some industrial rail from the southern part of what used to house the Fort Bragg lumber mill, but I've made sure to add in a bit of industrial rail just north of that site. Oh yeah, there really is nothing quite like starting a brand new city, however tricky it may be to get those first foundations in place. Anyways, I've named the city Port Isabel. Now this one is very much open to suggestions, so if you have a name and backstory suggestion that you think would be more fitting, let me know in the comments. And to provide a bit of context, I imagine Port Isabel is located somewhere in between Fort Bragg and San Francisco on the obviously Pacific coast of California. And I also imagine it to be the biggest city and port north of San Francisco and Oakland. Now, importantly, we are playing with everything unlocked so that we can do exactly as we please, but not with unlimited money. So while we can do exactly as we please, we have to pay for it, importantly. We're gonna start with a controversial choice here, I think. I'm gonna add the Eastern European Central train station because I just think it has some features that kind of remind me of Spanish influences in Californian train stations, and the color scheme kind of fits as well. You don't have to agree, but I'm definitely going for this one. So yeah, I mean, the materials and the textures, probably not what you'd find in this part of California, but these white pillars and the yellow clock tower and the red roofing, I think it matches pretty well. Now I want to frame this beautiful central station as a viewpoint. It's something you're gonna see as you enter from east to west alongside the main avenues leading into town. Totally not planned, by the way. And then we're just gonna branch this out in a long straight stretch. We may do changes, but this is just a start so that we achieve this look here. So we'll grab the continuous tool, and then I'm gonna find the 2 tiles out here at this edge of the station, and we're gonna branch all the way over to the 2 tiles on the opposite end. With this creation in place, we're going to remove this segment here and place a major roundabout in here. And we've got a lot of good choices here. So if we add this one in, that may just tie into like the yellow color scheme we're probably gonna see quite a bit of here in the California themed build. And then I'm gonna upgrade these 2 to async roads. We're also just gonna be upgrading this road here that runs parallel to the train station, make that a proper avenue as well. That is probably gonna be fitting with the type of development we'll be seeing here. Now, I don't know about you, but I always find the creation of the initial road layout of a new city to be a super overwhelming task. I never really know when I'm done or when to switch to zoning. Something I've found that helps is to have defined borders of the extent of the starting city. And to help define these borders a little better, I'm gonna be creating a ring road, but I need to buy a few additional tiles because I pretty much want the ring road to cover everything from the Pacific Ocean to the highway. So we're gonna move in here and buy, I think, these 2 tiles. We don't have to move into this space, and we're gonna buy these 2 tiles on this side. Okay, so this went from a small ring road project to adding a ton of additional infrastructure. I just kind of figured that we would have a pretty severe bottleneck down here when we started growing the city rapidly, because we had way too few on and off ramps from the freeway that cuts through. So safe to say, we've now got some added complexity that is very, very interesting to look at, if anything. And I just think getting this done early on is going to really benefit us in the long run. So it's a worthwhile investment, although it was a bit of a detour. We already have quite a few arterials in place, so if I could just get a few more down, that's pretty much just gonna frame the entire road layout. And we're gonna keep it a little simple and a little boring, but I'm gonna try my best to add a bit of variety and make some things look interesting as well. So something we could do out here, for instance, is just to kind of branch off here instead and create something interesting here. I also want to name some of these avenues to add a bit of character. So I was considering naming the main street here Broadway, because that is actually used in some places in California for like the main street. And then Myrtle Street will be Alameda Avenue. And as for Lindbergh Street, I think we're going to continue that all the way down to the coastline. So we're going to do a little breakup, just like we did with Alameda Avenue. And this one will go underneath, I think. It's gonna look more interesting. And let's just rename it to Pacific Boulevard, as it does make its way to the Pacific Ocean. And then for Thorn Street, which is the currently westernmost north to south main street, we'll name that something like Ocean Pass, just for a good time. And then I'm just gonna quickly redo the little arrangement we have here, because I actually want to make this half circle a little bigger and able to kind of wrap around the train station as well and lead some traffic to all this available space we also have. And we'll have to kind of figure out what we're gonna do, whether we're gonna like tunnel through or overpass, whatever the case may be. I think we're ready to start laying out the road layout, because we're already burning through our cash reserves and I have some pretty expensive things I need to buy here early on to establish the city. And we do have most of the main avenues in place. So I'm just gonna do a quick run through of my thoughts on the road hierarchy here in Port Isabel and how we're gonna lay out the actual blocks here in downtown. So to start with the hierarchy, the 4-lane avenues are like the top level. Then we're gonna transition to the regular vanilla 2-lane road. So I'm just gonna place one of these to kind of cut through here. It has half the capacity, 1 lane in either direction, and street side parking. We might use the 2-lane one-way roads as well. They have the same capacity, but just in one direction. The next level in the hierarchy actually has the exact same capacity, it's just aesthetically a little different, and it's this suburban 2-lane road I created in the Road Builder mod. So it's the same road, it just doesn't have any markings, making it look a little more suburban in nature basically. Now the next level below that is even more suburban in nature, and once again with the same actual capacity, because it's this suburban alley with a 25 miles per hour speed limit. So it's a slightly slower road, so I guess technically the capacity is lower. And it's even more suburban in nature because it's missing the sidewalks. As we move further down, we have the vanilla alleyway, which I'm probably going to be utilizing at places as well, just to make the road grid look a little more random and interesting. Now, most of the Southwest USA zones don't contain zones that are 6 tiles deep. It's either 5 or 4, or in the case of the row housing, 2 and 3. So to accommodate that, I'm just going to create a differently sized block throughout most of Port Isabel's downtown, which is probably going to be around 8 tiles deep. So it would be something like this. Let's get cracking. I think we're about ready to start placing down some things and actually grow the city. And this has to be one of the more creative road layouts I've ever created. Not really sure what happened here. I kind of imagined that there'd be like a sunken stretch of like expressway that would lead traffic to and from what used to be some real heavy industry out here. But ever since this has kind of closed up shop, only a stretch of it has been kept because it does provide easy flow of traffic into downtown. So we're gonna start with something very exciting, as we're gonna spend a bunch of money on parking lots. These are gonna be integral here in Port Isabel, at least from the get-go, and then as the city develops and maybe we conduct some votes, things might change. But for now, parking is very much a feature in here, and it's gonna be parking garages as well as just a lot of surface parking. And I'd rather just place this early on because it restricts the amount of zonable space, making the zoning task a little easier. And it's always a little painful to retrofit the parking into the city because you obviously have to demolish some stuff. Now, to make these look a little more unique, we're gonna use the incredible area bucket mod because it allows us to very easily replace an existing surface with another surface. The easiest way to showcase this is to just do it. So let's grab this pavement surface 02, and then if we click the this button here, enable area replacement, we can just click on an existing surface and it gets replaced with something else. And this is perfect because it's gonna make it very, very easy to make all our parking lots look a lot more distinct, at least for the color scheme we actually want to use. You see, that already looks a lot more realistic because sometimes, you know, the developers of parking lots will use different materials or a different ratio of materials or whatever the case may be. They often have like different shades of, well, gray. Yeah, there's a joke in there somewhere, I know. Then we're gonna use the equally incredible better Bulldozer mod to just kind of remove some features from some of these, so that if we have two of the same parking lot, we can just remove a few props. For instance, the fence from this version, but not this version. But over here, we're gonna remove the little building on the side. And of course, you can use parking lot roads as well for like a slightly cheaper, more modular option. So I've just added a few segments and upgraded ones in a few places just to kind of have those in place as well. We're gonna move into adding some signature buildings, starting with a couple of colorful, really distinct looking residential buildings here. And I like to place some signature buildings up front in my downtown before I start zoning everything, because they usually have pretty distinctive footprints, so they're usually quite bigger than zonable lots. And obviously, since you manually place them, they retain a unique look. I also went for this architect's mansion, but I'm actually imagining that this is like an art gallery of sorts here in Port Isabel. I kind of think the architecture matches that overall vibe, so yeah, kind of went for that one. But yeah, more apartment buildings, and generally you'll find that I don't really place any skyscrapers. Maybe one or two buildings you could classify as a skyscraper, but otherwise I kind of want this mid-rise or even lower mid-rise look in Port Isabel, for now at least. I'm also making sure to add plenty of mixed use alongside the main streets, especially Broadway, because that's gonna enable us to have quite a bit of quite a few storefronts at like the lower floors, which is just gonna move in more people, you know. Adding a few malls, I guess, and this beautiful Sunshine Hotel has to be placed very centrally in downtown. I think that's no discussion there. And then some of the other remaining Southwest signature commercial assets for all the hipsters. Actually, we're adding a few more mid-rises, some modern, some old. A few additional malls as well, including one of the newer ones from the Chinese region pack. And the Eastern European Hotel has a somewhat Californian color scheme, so that also goes in. And to really wrap up our signature spree, a couple of generic office buildings, including the new office tower from this Southwest USA pack. Alright, so I think we have a decent mid-rise skyline currently, and the whole point of this design is that eventually when the city really starts spreading, people will think that the skyline is a little underwhelming for the actual size of the city. I think this is a very Californian thing. Anyways, functionally we're already bleeding money, and I haven't even placed any parks or any service buildings yet, so let's get to the service buildings. I need parks and service buildings to be placed, and then we'll get to zoning. I promise. We'll zone in 2025. That's a promise. Anyways, I kind of want this northern part of the inner city to be slightly worse off than the southern part, so there needs to be like a visual difference in the level of buildings and the level of crime and poverty. The reason I think it makes sense for this northern part to be a little worse off is that there's going to be plenty of industry out here, adding pollution, and then much of this triangle here is kind of nestled in between some pretty heavy, you know, infrastructure. There's an overpass here, there's a proper freeway here, there's like a noisy road here as well, so I think it just makes sense. Now, the way I'm gonna try and achieve this functionally is by directing more of my service coverage to the southern part of the inner city. And then we're gonna follow up and we'll see, you know, whether this part actually levels up quicker than this part and whether there is an actual like wealth disparity. It's gonna be an interesting experiment at least. So I think I'm gonna remove a few lanes because the first thing I wanna plop down is the elementary school, which is going to be heavily angled to the southern part of town. And it's a pretty sizable asset, and I want a bit of extra space so that eventually we can do some of these upgrades that require even more space if we need to. So with that placed, our deficit is even worse. I think as far as the fire department goes, we'll grab this new small station from the Southwest Fire Pack, and I am gonna place that somewhat centrally. Not necessarily in like the heart of downtown, but I wanted to face an easy access road, so I'll just get that placed here. Policing, I'm gonna grab once again the new Southwest Police Station, very nice asset, and I want to angle this towards the southern portion of the area. So let's see, I think this is a decent location. As for healthcare, once again, we'll grab the small Southwest Medical Clinic, getting a lot of new service buildings to use here. And once again, we're just gonna angle this towards the southern portion. So south of Broadway is like the main rule here, but the more south I can put it without it seeing odd, the better. Or I guess the worse for the northern part of town. It's a little morbid, this whole experiment, but I'm just trying to create something realistic here. Let's place that alongside Dean Street. As far as death care coverage, we're gonna grab the custom medium cemetery I grabbed from PDX Mods. Good capacity and good amount of hearses, and it's much cheaper than going for the vanilla cemetery, and it's gonna be a lot cheaper than going for the crematorium. And I think we're gonna place this in the northern part of town. There are some pretty good opportunities here alongside Alameda Avenue, and maybe even moving it close to this little highway segment so I don't have housing right next to it. And now we just need to get some parks dotted around the place before we start zoning. So I'll grab this relatively new hedge park we got with one of the more recent patches, and I think we're gonna place that somewhere very centrally, maybe right here alongside Broadway. We'll grab the large city park from the vanilla game and move a bit further south. Maybe a spot like this. Seems I have to enable Anarchy for whatever reason, but that's okay. We'll just kind of align that in the very center of this block. Yoink. Then we have the passage park. And I guess we need some sort of parks up here as well. I don't want the look to be too dramatic, and I'm actually doubting just how well we can achieve this wealth disparity look anyways. But I want a park, maybe this was turned into a park right next to the highway. Yeah, very nice. We have the multi-purpose park, which is also really cool. Let's just try and correct some of this road layout and just get it on the other side of Ocean Pass here. I'll add in a few large playgrounds and yeah, one in the north as well. I'm being way too kind now. And then some of the smaller parks as well. Now, when it comes to this initial zoning of Port Isabel's inner city, I'm going to use the super fast building option of the super fast building and leveling mod. This is essentially the same as moving into the simulation tab in the developer menu, moving down to economy and enabling super fast building spawning. And as the name might imply, this just means that whenever we zone a lot, it's going to instantly spawn and develop. Very important thing to note here, this does not mean that people or businesses are going to move into that building. It's not a way to kind of cheat the demand system. It's just a way to instantly know what the building is actually going to look like as soon as you zone it. And I find this super helpful when zoning out inner city starting areas in general, but especially if you're using all new zoning types where you're not super accustomed to how the 2x4 medium residential building looks, for instance. Much of the zoning is going to be a time lapse with some music, so we can cover a lot of distance in a short amount of time, but there are a few ground rules I want to follow and just kind of explain. Densities are going to be highest in the very heart of downtown. It's going to be a mixture of low, medium, and high density, and then as we move out to the, quote-unquote outskirts of the inner city area, we're going to drop the densities significantly. Additionally, zoning is going to be a little different alongside the major arterials. So for instance, alongside Almedia Avenue, it's going to be a lot of commercial as we move out here, and then just general density changes. But I am going to mix in some medium density stuff in all parts of the inner city, just to not have a too harsh transition to suburban sprawl, basically. Additionally, there are a few additional rules I want to follow. We've already tried to accommodate the fact that most of these new 7 southwest zones don't have buildings that are more than 5 tiles deep by making sure that the block sizes are relatively small, but there are other quirks as well. For instance, many of the mixed-use buildings of the new southwest mixed-use housing theme don't actually have any corner lots. So just keep that in mind. If we choose to zone an entire block, like let's say this one, and we just hit play to let it super quickly develop, we'll get lots like this, where you effectively don't have, any windows or anything facing Broadway. Some of them look all right on corner lots, and others, as you can see, just don't look all that great. So you can either just zone it mixed use, as I've done here, and then we can move into one of the new zones that do have corner lots, such as the medium density. And then we can basically just choose to, let's grab the high density for this one. Rezone these, let them develop, and then take a new look. And now things look a little better. We've got a bit of repetition here though, and we can kind of get around that by utilizing an entirely different zone and then just letting that redevelop. And I guess this also highlights how nice it is to have this super fast building thing enabled. Like I said, it's not really a hack because people aren't necessarily going to move in if you don't have the demand, but it just makes everything easier. In general, it's just a trial and error process. So now that I know that the 2x4 high density housing building looks like this, then something I might want to do is just to kind of see if I can switch that zone to moving out here instead. And what I mean by that is that we can just use the mixed use here and then see if we can get it to spawn on the corner instead. And we could. I think this looks a tiny bit better, and the mixed use is at the very center of the lot, so it's not going to be any issues that there's no, corner piece here. Let's get zoning.
I'll be fine as long as I'm with you. As long as I'm with you. As long as I'm with you. I'll be fine as long as you're with me. I'll be fine as long as I'm with you. I'll be fine.
To be where you, to be where you, to be where you are. To be where you, to be where you are. To be where you, to be where you, be where you are. To be where you, be where you are. Be where you, be where you, be where you are. To 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 be where you to be where you are. To be where you to be where you be where you are. To be where you
right, that was a bit of a zoning marathon, but I hope you guys were able to pick up on my approach of this. And like I said, it's trial and error, block by block at times, which can be a little slow, but I think generally speaking, we've got a pretty sizable city now. And obviously, we've got a bit of a death care crisis as well. So I'm just gonna pause the game, and I think we need a crematorium, and then we also just need more service upgrades. And just a bit more of everything, really. I think we're gonna start with the crematorium because that seems like a bit of an issue currently. I'm actually inclined to just kind of continue some of the road grids. Let's see out here. We do have a bit of space here. We've got an open block between Hamilton, Fawn, and Park Street. So why not just utilize that space instead of having to demolish anything? And I think we'll just move the crematorium. I want to move it real close to the highway. In fact, I may just try and angle it a bit, if I can, just to make it look a little better integrated. I'll angle it like that. And then I think for starters, we probably need the hearse garage. Oh, I might even be able to squeeze that in here. Can I disable snapping and cross my fingers that is actually gonna work? That is gonna work. I'll cover that up with some trees and whatnot, and maybe just... Actually, now we're at it, let's just make sure that the surface is here. Oh, whoops. I replaced the surface by accident. Let's just make sure the surface here connects. Just like that. It's a tiny thing, which I probably shouldn't be focused on right now, but it's just to make it look a little nicer. And let's hit play and just get these hearses out on the way. Let's see, we can dispatch 15, which is pretty good. Something else that we did think about when we placed the school, we're gonna need to expand it. So let's just see how much we're looking at. Oh, 500 additional capacity at least. So let's see, we're gonna add, I mean, just the additional classrooms alone would be enough, but the arts and music building is probably just a good place to start. And maybe an annex building. I mean, we do have the space for it, which kind of was the whole point of placing it out here. And if I'm a little cheeky and use Anarchy, I can also angle this the way I want, but let's just add the annex building out here. That should very much be sufficient, and if you haven't noticed, we're making money, so I can actually afford this, which is obviously quite a joyful thing. And I think I'm gonna grab the one-way alley and just kind of see if I can move that all the way around the building, because it does have some surfaces that you know, really are looking to connect. Not actually, there is a few on this side as well, so I'm just gonna get that connected up, and we'll just get a curve going here, just like that. It looks a little better. These are not, you know, entry points that are actually necessary for the building to function, but it usually just looks better getting that connected up. Now, it might be a little early, but I'm very curious to see whether our experiment with making the northern part of town a little less desirable than the southern part of town actually play out. So there should be some tooling here. Land value should probably be the metric we're looking at. And I don't think I can really evaluate these colors, but I do get a specific land value of an area when I hover my mouse around it. So if we look at these southern parts here, alongside Pacific Lane, it seems like the land value is approaching 80 cents. 74, 75 here for Strawberry Lane. It's above 80 as we get closer to the school. It's even, oh, it's looking like it's 100 cents here alongside the southern part of Alameda Avenue. Moving north, let's take Madison Lane. 75, 95, 75 cents, 65. Moving closer to the industry, 45. Okay, so there's a definite change here where the houses that are located very close to the industry do have a lower land value, but we can also see that from the graphic, right? We can actually see the impact that the industry is having, as well as the highway and the noise pollution it brings. But there's not a massive issue yet, and I guess, I mean, part of it is that the commute from this area to the school isn't actually that long, but I think it's obvious that there are a few more buildings down here that add to the land value. Although we did also end up having quite a dense cluster here in between Alameda Avenue and Umber Street. And I didn't mean for this building to grow this tall, but I zoned it, it kind of popped out, and I'm like, you know, it adds a fun little thing to the skyline, so I think we're just gonna keep it. The next big plan is going to bring the freeway, this interstate system, eastwards and inlands, because we've got a lot of empty space here that is going to be completely swallowed by suburban sprawl as we continue to develop Port Isabel. And I only think it'd be realistic to have some actual, you know, maybe a sunken highway or an elevated segment, one or the other, kind of stretch through this area. And I think we're gonna branch off from here and create a complex interchange. But before we do that, it seems I have my very first traffic issue to solve, which is always exciting. We're seeing a ton of traffic moving in from the north, and we don't have all that many lanes to actually handle this. So in best American fashion, we're just gonna increase the amount of lanes. And I think this is the main bottleneck, so we'll make an async road, adding one additional lane right here. And we'll use this version for the street segments, adding in an additional lane as you move into town. And then we'll move in here and upgrade this to a highway version of the async road. That is gonna mess a bit with zoning, but that is a sacrifice I am willing to make in the name of progress, to add more lanes, basically. There we go. We'll just let these guys regrow. That shouldn't be an issue. Also, a lot of the traffic seems to be taxis, but I don't have any taxi depots, so they all originate in outside cities. Not just to bring people in, but I guess to actually move people around. So instead of providing public transportation, at this point in time at least, we're gonna build a taxi depot of our own. Let's see, I need to find a good location, somewhere where I can just about squeeze in this building. And maybe right here, at least with Anarchy, it's a pretty decent fit. I'll get rid of the industry here and this little lane that is causing issues with this freight line rail. And then I think we need the dispatch center upgrade, because I'm not gonna make dedicated taxi stands right now at least. And then in Californian spirit, we should probably do the electric taxis upgrade as well. It's only 1/4 of the fleet which is replaced by electric taxis. So it's not like Norwegian levels, but it's pretty good. We're gonna add that as well. And then right before we hit play and hopefully see all 25 vehicles dispatch in this cool new fashion where they actually move away from the parking spots, one additional change I want to do to our industrial district is I want to grab a light color scheme, such as this one, and paste that across much of the warehouses out here. Because I find that in many warehouse districts around the world, and especially in California, many of these warehouses have pretty light like color schemes and roofs. I'm going to keep a few of those that have slightly different colors as well. I don't mind that, but it's just to make the whole thing a little more uniform and really look like a warehouse district. And I do feel that the white or roofing, aluminum panels or whatever it is, probably some cheap sheet metal actually, kind of helps with that. Yeah, I think that looks a lot better. Anyways, let's watch how this coolness unfolds. I mean, from the angle of this taxi, it does feel kind of Californian. As you guys can see and probably saw during the time-lapse, I added in quite a few palm trees, but mainly along some of the roads here and not so much in the quote-unquote wild. I imagine most of these are planted for whatever reason, but it's not something that grows extensively in the wild here in this slightly more northern part of California. We're not too far north from San Francisco, Like I said, we're probably more south from Fort Bragg than we are north from San Francisco, but you know, it's not exactly San Diego. But moving on from our taxi trip, let's tackle this monster project here. We need to buy a few additional tiles, but I mean, our economy is all right without being great, so hopefully I can afford at least these 2 tiles without going in the negative. It's gonna be close though, 51k a month. It's almost 2k per day, so yeah. We're not making a ton of money anymore. Something else I need to be careful about is that on this wonderful map we have quite a few like small creeks and you know, water sources here that create this wonderful area that's cutting through here with the river, and I want to avoid disrupting these or removing these and kind of respect the effort to put these into the map. So we're gonna at least have to make a bit of a turn here, and I think we're gonna make a sunken switch again. It just feels so Californian and it's just so cool to look at. So the first step we're gonna do is we're gonna upgrade this to dedicated highway segments. Let's just pause for a moment and get these things upgraded. We don't have any zoning here anyways, so I think it's fitting just like that. And with this in place, I probably need to remove this segment and okay, let's see, I gotta think here. So we're gonna need at least 6 lanes, just as with this freeway. I think at least we can always downgrade to 4 lanes if that makes sense. But the first thing we're gonna do is we're just gonna grab one little segment here and just make sure we branch off. And I think, should we already start lowering into the ground? Not yet. I need to get the actual interchange in place. Otherwise all the connections gonna be funky. We'll grab the 3-laner, enable parallel mode to get a 6-lane in place, the continuous tool, and then this is where we'll get our on and off ramps. But this is gonna be very interesting indeed. Okay, so I'm gonna click here, then we're gonna enable constant slope, we're gonna enable ground mode, and then we're gonna go down by, let's see, probably 8 3/4, something like this. Yes. And then we'll avoid the water source here, so we're gonna cut underneath the main road. This would be, what is this? Broadway? It's Broadway, yes, of course. We'll cut underneath Broadway and kind of straighten up as we move out here. But I don't want it to be entirely straight. I don't mind that there's like, you know, that it has a few curves and whatnot. And then this area is a little weird, so I don't think we're gonna continue it any further. All right, that seemed to work out fairly well. Now the connection part here is going to be super interesting. So I think we're going to do away with some of the current stuff we have in place here, because we need to branch off right about here to ensure a proper connection. And we need some form of overpass from where we're going to do this. Actually, we could probably just connect to this part here. We're going to have to remove this as well. I think I know how to approach this segment, so why not start with what I feel confident about? Although that may, of course, change rather quickly as we actually dig into this, but let's upgrade this to a 4-lane segment and just ensure that we can simply branch out from here. There we go, and then we'll make this connection here. We'll create this connection as well, please. Yes, we can use move it to make that look a little more pretty. It is very ugly right now. Then I need to branch out right up here as before, and then we'll just do one that continues and connects directly down here to the highway. But it needs to happen as early as possible, because this segment here is kind of dangerous, but that's just how it's gonna be, I think. And it's not entirely unrealistic. In fact, we have one in my city where when you merge on, there's an off ramp as well, pretty close by. So you know, you really gotta focus on what you're actually doing as you either exit or enter the highway. So I don't think that's entirely unrealistic, but we'll just make sure we get the upgrades here in place and then reassess. Alright, so we're ready to try the simple solution, which is just to bring an off-ramp to right to this bridge here. And then we can try and make like an async section to make getting onto this a little easier. Yeah, I haven't really thought this through, but I guess that's part of the charm, or the fun, or the frustration for you as a viewer. That's your pick. I find it fun at least. So let's see. We'll need to branch off here and just connect. I say just connect, and of course it's a little tricky. Just like that. This looks like a mess, but we'll get that fixed. And then let's say we have a 5-lane async version here. So if I can just do something like this, then that actually looks fairly all right, I would say. Although, of course, this segment does look a tiny bit weird now, but I guess if I just... Actually, let's see if I grab this one. Can I just kind of center that a little more through that upgrade? I think I can. Not bad at all, actually. And it even it created the lane, like the lanes I want. And what a mess this has turned out to be. I absolutely love it. It's perfect. Perfectly chaotic. Oh man, let's see if we can add a bridge. Actually, wait a minute. Let's just do a quick branching off from this part of Broadway, just so we get some additional nodes and we can kind of limit the size of the bridges so that they don't look too funky. So let's see, we'll just branch out around here, I think, and we'll move this way too. We don't have to go for a ground solution. We can move these very, very close together, at least something like this. And then we can turn this into a bridge, and of course this big stretch here. And it's always so cool. We're gonna have a ton of bridges moving across here, because obviously the actual road layout we'll be building out here came first. Some of the segments might be a couple of 100 years old, which is old for California. So we'll just have bridges crossing, a ton of bridges, just like we have here alongside the inner city here. Tons of weird bridges moving across. I'm really not planning to do a ton of development out here, because this episode is way too long as is, but I think that this oddly shaped triangle here, with an area that has obviously been really carved up and harmed by the freeway construction, would be fitting for a bit of warehouse industry and maybe a few service buildings that we probably need as well. So I'm just gonna grab the suburban road that we've used so extensively, and then maybe just branch off from around here so that we kind of use the same intersection that's already there. We'll just bring a road down here, and then perhaps the wide alley, which is a road I do enjoy using for industry, obviously. And we'll just branch real close to the freeway and just kind of move up here and try and add a little connection. We're gonna need a road maintenance depot, because I am starting to see some issues with our traffic, or rather we had a few crashes earlier, and that's partly because some of the highways especially are in a pretty bad state already. So we're gonna, that's a perfect fit without me planning for it. So that's pretty nice, but there's, yeah, just about space for this guy here. Get that right in there, and then obviously we can't do without a bit of parking, a bit of surface parking, and then some good old zoning with my own low density warehouse theme, which is basically just some industry without smokestacks and without any ground and air pollution as a result of not having those smokestacks in place. Pretty cool. We'll just grab the bright color scheme we used out here with recolor. Make sure to colorize these. Maybe even this actual maintenance building as well. And there you have it. So to move from industry to something else entirely, our Central Park is looking very barren currently. So this is really something I want to do just for the overall aesthetics of Port Isabel. And I have a bit of a wacky idea that I hope is going to work, but I'm not quite sure. So one of these, let's see, one of these large parks we had with the modern architecture pack. This one is definitely not a fit. But this one, I mean, if I pause and I enable Anarchy, I am able to, I think this is centering it perfectly. And then obviously it's a bit of an overlap, which isn't great, but I don't think there's going to be many people like hanging out in these areas. So if I just move in and remove a few of these props here, like some of these light poles, a few of the trees, and any other prop that might just kind of cut into our little roundabout here, then I think we can make something nice out of this. So far so good, no pathing complaints or any other issues, but we need to kind of integrate this a little better and just frame it a little better as well. So let's just see if we can grab the small pedestrian street and then branch off from kind of where the edge of the park is, right here, I guess. And then if we go for like an 80-degree angle, so we're gonna make sure we don't have any snapping enabled, and we'll go for 80 degrees spawned from the train station, as you can see up there. Just move straight through. We should now be able to a little easier adjust the surfaces here so that they kind of fit within the pedestrian street and make this look a whole lot better so that it doesn't stick out like a sore thumb currently. Let's just see. I mean, I think that works. Something that we'll need to do, but which we can easily do now that we have these additional nodes due to this crossing, is just upgrade this to a keyed segment. And that is pretty cool. I'm gonna add in some super simple paths and a bunch of trees, and then we're gonna wait for another day with the heavy detailing of this park.
Too many years of the suffering here, burning down right now. And I don't know where I run to, but it could be oblivion. I dream I was making love to a whole new life. Learn my lesson once, I'll skip the reminder of what's left for me. If I turn around, you let me down.
I think it's amazing what a few wiggly pathways and a bunch of trees can actually do to an area. Really does resemble a park, even though it doesn't really provide the same attractiveness or like land value bonus as placing down an actual park. Anyways, I think the final area I wanna see if I can fix and fill out before we wrap up this way too long first episode is this art space next to the train station. And I kind of want to do one medium to high density development and one development that is very low density. So I think for this purpose, I probably need to re-upgrade this to an avenue again, at least this segment right here. And then we're gonna grab the suburban two-way road, and we're just gonna disable snapping and have a snaky road that just kind of makes its way through this area. This one might even be a little too wide. Is the suburban alley any? Yeah, it's actually gonna be the suburban alley instead. Yank. So I want some sort of high-rise or a mid-rise right on this corner, and the rest is going to be a detached house with very little garden that is just kind of copy-pasted everywhere. So it's going to be interesting. We're going to grab one of the houses from the new pack. And as far as I know, we can now change the alignment of Find It. Oh my goodness, that is nice. Yeah, I definitely prefer this view here. Anyways, what I was saying is that we can grab something from the Southwest style that is high density, and I think these are... there are 5 tiles wide, 4 tiles deep. So it's gonna be one of these we'll be placing, and let's just see what sort of building I can find. I don't want one of the super tall ones, so maybe I'll just grab this one and kind of stitch that together twice, if that is gonna be feasible. Oh, they actually have like pool spaces and stuff on top. Is there a slightly taller version? There is this one. So I guess we could kind of stitch those two together. Okay, so if I place this one right here and we grab good old Move It, and we just kind of angle this slightly, and we move that in to the building. Yeah, something like this. Anyways, the next part is gonna be quite a density transition. Very Californian, I should hope. So lot width is probably just gonna be 2. I wonder if we can stick with the Southwest pack. I think that would be very fitting. So something that is maybe 2 by 3 and potentially looks a little more fancy, even though it technically isn't fancy, at least not with this location here. So let's see, we're gonna grab one of the higher levels, I think, because they're less likely to just spawn anywhere in the wild. So we'll grab these. I think we'll grab these level 4s. Are there even smaller versions? There actually are. Can I fit in? I wouldn't be able to fit in all that many of those. So I think we're gonna go for these. The level 4s, and then we'll just disable any snapping. We'll make sure we have Anarchy on, and then we'll just get these placed very, very, very closely together. And then a slight adjustment of the road, where we can just bring these a little further back. We do have a bit of space. Actually, we have plenty of space. Look how far from the train tracks these are. And then we can move these a little closer together so that they don't really clip into the towers right out the back. And then we'll need a tiny, tiny alleyway just to ensure that these guys have road connection. Yank. We even have space for a row out front. Plenty of space. Isn't that a beautiful development? Then we'll be adding in a few trees and call it a day. I mean, if you do enjoy looking at trains when we eventually get some lines established, then this isn't a too bad location, right? I know I said this would be the last build, but I definitely need to create like at least one additional development just like that, you know, single developer. This time we're gonna go for some medium density, once again from the new Southwestern pack. And maybe, just maybe, we can, let's see if we can align a couple of these and just make that look all right. Now these have no facades on the sides or windows. So we're gonna have to create our own quote-unquote corner lots, and I can already see the pathing issues arise. It's gonna be interesting to see if this is actually gonna work. We're gonna give it a go, and hopefully a bit of Move It magic can get things sorted. We don't have to have them this far pushed from the road, I guess. So that is one change we can make. So if I can just move a little closer to, yes, that does seem to do the trick. So in this configuration, I might just have enough space to actually get a bit of parking in place. It's gonna be a little tricky, but if we add a few of these very, very small lanes to just kind of cut through where I have a bit of space. Just like that. And then maybe we'll grab, let's see, this one. There's perfect space for this parking lot to kind of move through here, and just add a bit of parking right back here. Let's have a look. Maybe get rid of a few of my trees, of course. That is perfect. Such a simple little build, but it just adds so much character to the city to have stuff like this. And I think that is it for the first episode of Port Isabel, the city without a port. We'll get there eventually. I plan to add a pretty sizable port. And as you guys can probably see, I've added in some districts as well. Now, I guess some of the names are subject to change if you guys have some good suggestions. But I'd much rather you focus on suggestions for what we're to build next. There are so many practical things we're missing, such as the actual port, and we desperately need more workplaces because unemployment is just rampant. But we also need a rail yard. We need to expand the rail line to the south to eventually connect to the Bay Area. We need to get the trains actually going, and we need to start the sprawling masses to the east as well. Get some of this stuff built up, which is going to be a ton of fun. But this is what we have so far, and I'm pretty happy with what we've achieved in this video, although it's going to be a long one. So as a quick recap, we have a downtown, and I'm just going to add a super simple surface in here and a few trees before the cinematics. I just remembered that. Now, downtown is a pretty nice district. There's a lot of surface parking and a lot of difference in densities here, but it looks so random and, to me at least, pretty realistic. It has a few central parks, the most notable being the Pacific Park complex. Let's move just north of downtown where we have a mercado. I think this means market in Spanish. And I considered uptown as well, but that's kind of boring. But basically what I'm trying to capture with this name is that this is very much a transitionary area. It's not nearly as dense as downtown, but there is quite a bit of medium density and even a high-rise out here in this slightly dense cluster between Alameda Avenue and Umber Street. And it should contain the new district we just made. That's something we just need to get fixed. Yank. That makes more sense, I think. And then as we move north from Mercado, we move to the creatively named north side. Yeah, this is mainly just low density sprawl with a mixed in medium density as well, just to kind of break it up a little bit. To the immediate west of north side, we have Timberwork. This is one of the oldest original industrial districts in Port Isabel. The city initially grew due to massive timber exports from the hills and mountains, leaving for other nations and to move down the Pacific coastline here. So it still bears the name, although today it's a pretty varied manufacturing and warehouse district, although I imagine timber is still going to be a major export here, but we're yet to build that infrastructure just yet. Let's move south from Timberwork. Bright Hill is a bit of a small, half-empty district for now at least. Contains the train station, a bit of industry as well, some train tracks, and a very mixed density area here. Lots of traffic and activity here, as this is one of the main arterials cutting through. This is of course the Ocean Pass. And then if we move south from Bright Hill, we have Vista. I might break this up into two neighborhoods, make them a little thicker, but a lot less taller, and maybe just have North Vista and South Vista or something. But for now, it's pretty low density. Has a few parks and whatnot. Just east of Vista, we have, once again, creatively named South Isabel. I actually don't mind the name. Yeah. Moving north, we have Lower City. This is inspired by my adventures in the World of Warcraft many years ago, and I just needed a name for something that is just south of downtown, and just like Mercado, it has a slightly more dense vibe than, you know, as when we move further out, although this lower city seems to be a lot less dense than Mercado. And I guess the resident count actually also kind of proves that, because I guess lower city has a smaller footprint as well, but it has less than half the population, so I guess it all adds up. Now, Santa Rosa is the historic Rowhouse district here in Port Isabel, so there probably used to be more of these beautiful, colorful row houses many years ago, but, you know, redevelopment, freeways, all that good stuff that people do in American cities means that not too much of it has been preserved. So Santa Rosa has the largest concentration of it, and then you'll find like small clusters elsewhere. To wrap things up, we have the Talbot Industrial Park, and I guess this was named something else right up till around the 1960s, when the federal government started funding these massive freeways to cut through what probably used to be a thriving district here. Who knows? Now it's the Talbot Industrial Park, because as we talked about earlier, much of the land very close or adjacent to the freeway has been redeveloped or rezoned for commercial and industrial purposes, and there are actually no residents at all in Talbot Industrial Park currently. But that is it. If you've stuck with me to the end here, you probably like my content, so thank you guys so much for watching. You guys know the drill. Liking and commenting and all that good stuff really helps out. And if you want to grab hold of this Southwest USA region pack, remember it's free and easy to grab from PDX Mart, so I'd advise everyone to grab it and have a look. Personally, I am very, very impressed. I gotta be honest, I did not imagine it to be this distinctly Southwestern USA, and then some of it is great from a more like generalist approach, such as much of the high and medium density that you can use everywhere. But overall, it's just been a fantastic pack, and I have mixed in other zoning types here in Port Isabel, and will of course continue to do that and utilize all the packs to my best ability to make it look as realistic as possible. But generally, it's rare that I create a city where I use so much from a specific pack when we already have, North American themed buildings in game. I'm gonna shoot some final cinematics. I hope to see you all in the next one. Goodbye.